Hey, thanks for joining us, Mohamed. We really appreciate you coming today and spending some time to share your knowledge and expertise with us. And we've already had an opportunity to see you on several podcasts out there. You've been in the field for over, what, 20 years now, and doing tours all over with Cliff Dunn and others. And you're a great person to talk to tonight about the topic of Nefertiti and Akhenaten and what they were really up to. But first, we'd like to hear a little bit more about you, how you got into the field, what type of work you do in the field, because as I understand it, you're not the traditional academic Egyptologist. You have an alternative perspective on things. And you've set up a special tour company for handling esoteric tours. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work and what your knowledge is overseas.
Thanks, Teresa. I had a very interesting beginning. My hometown is Memphis, Egypt, and that is the original Memphis. My family house is in a city called Badrashin, and Badrashin includes Memphis, Saqqara, Abu Sir, Dahshur, Abu Jarab. So that it's not a small town. It is the part of the town is overlooking the Nile, but the back side of the town is all the ancient sites I mentioned. So I remember this story with clear details. I was 10 years old. I was in the 4th grade. The school took us to a field trip to Saqqara. And I remember that the bus dropped us at the gate and we had to walk all the way to the step pyramid. But then our teacher, they decided to take us to another site first, inside Saqqara. And guess what was that site? It was the Serapeum. I visited the Serapeum when I was 10 years old. That was about 1987. I remember running all the way to the end at the Serapeum, coming back, trying to jump into the rooms of each granite box. And it was very dusty. But I remember carefully the story about the bulls, and it didn't resonate with me. I didn't feel that it is accurate. There is something wrong. But of course, I didn't have any data or any ability to understand if this is true or no. Unfortunately, teaching history in Egypt is not like very professional, or let's say they don't here focus much. Maybe because it is so long history. Maybe there are millions of details, thousands of names of leaders, and thousands of battles. Maybe that is the reason. If I will see it from a positive point of view, it is too long history, and it needs like 20 years to study it. So I started to realize that there are foreigners, and as a countryside boy, seeing foreigners, that is not something daily can happen. We see only foreigners on TV with the American movies. Okay,
Yeah.
person, that was something interesting. So I wanted to talk to them. I couldn't because I studied only Arabic. I didn't study English before prep school, and I was in primary school. So my teacher told me to talk to them, you have to speak their language, and maybe English is one of their language. So I saw an Egyptian guy talking to them. I told him, this is an Egyptian is talking to them. He told me this is a tour guide. So from that moment, I decided to become a tour guide when I was 10 years old. And here I am. I became a tour guide after, and I got high marks. I was a good student when I was in high school. And my mark could take me to other colleges. Tourism and my faculty, or it was in Cairo, called Hilwan University. So the college was also one of the top colleges, but I could go to a higher one. So I'm always proud to call myself tour guide. Unfortunately, many tour guides, they claim themselves Egyptologists. And I tell them, no, this is not correct. as a tour guide, I see myself better than Egyptologists. How? Egyptologists study only ancient Egypt. And most of the cases, they study history and archaeology of Egypt. Okay, to study language, that is a separate study. So I will tell you a surprise that many of the Egyptologists, they don't read hieroglyphics. They must have the dictionary in their hand and able to, in order to translate some texts, or they know the famous formulas, the famous words. But to find an Egyptologist who is fully aware with the language, no, he must do separate studies. We studied Egyptology. We studied Greco-Roman Egypt. We studied Coptic Egypt as a tour guide. We studied Islamic Egypt, and we studied modern Egypt. Okay, so we studied all the history of Egypt. That's why when I see something from the ancient Egyptian times and it survived through the Greek-Roman and the Coptic, so I can understand the changes and the quality and the authenticity of this tradition, because I can track this tradition in other civilizations existed in Egypt. Also, we studied art, we studied religion, we studied everything related to ancient Egypt and Coptic Egypt and Islamic Egypt and Greco-Roman Egypt. So I can tell you that we can see the big picture. As a tour guide, I can look to the big picture, not the limited picture. So when we talk about pyramids, I can understand the ideas of pyramids from the point of view of the Greeks, why it was called pyramids. Okay, and what is the concept of the pyramid during the Greek civilization and later during the Islamic civilization when they call it haram, that is the Arabic name of the pyramid. Okay, we will come to this later in the episode. So I graduated and I had lots of questions. I started working on field and leading tours. Time by time, some of the things I studied, I found that it is not accurate. It doesn't make any sense. Like the pyramid was used as a tomb. That was the first thing, was immediately debunking in my head. It was like naturally debunking. But the key was the bent pyramid, because we studied that the bent pyramid was a mistake. The engineers made a terrible mistake, and because they were amateurs, so they couldn't make good measurements for the angles, and that's why they had to change the angle. So by visiting this pyramid many times, and every time I stare to the pyramid, looking to the pyramid, seeing that if this is a mistake, so how come if it will be like something real, like something not mistake? It looks brilliant, it looks strong, solid, great structure. How come we call it a mistake? If it is a mistake, it would collapse a long time ago. If it is a mistake, they wouldn't finish it. So I kept asking myself, and I was lucky to start meeting so many smart people and expert in their fields, engineers, physicists and chemists and geophysicists, geologists. And I was lucky to meet some of the famous names of those fields, like Chris Dunn, Robert Schoch, Nassim Haramein. And by the way, not only one geologist like Robert Schoch, I met many. I remember a geologist, an official geologist called Adrian. I forgot his last name. And Adrian joined one of my tours, and we were talking about the stone. He immediately put his fingers in his pocket, came up with a tool. So he has his tools with his pocket, small tools, doing some tests. Okay. So I managed to build a good opinion about the ancient Egyptian civilization, because I shared my knowledge with them and they shared their knowledge with me. And I was a kind of the person who is not rejecting any story unless I am very sure it is wrong.
Good.
Okay. One of my close friends called Johnny Enoch. Johnny is a believer in the extraterrestrials, and he believes in these types of stories. I wasn't, okay, in the beginning, but I didn't deny what he's saying, what he's telling me. And actually, I was trying to find a connection, like what if these stories are Okay, so maybe now I am not very strong believers of aliens or extraterrestrials as beings, but I am a big believer with the extraterrestrials' energies, powers. Okay, and I don't deny the existence unless something is very clear, saying yes or no. Okay. That's why I, after a short time of being a tour guide, works for travel agencies, I decided to have my own travel agency, which is not easy in Egypt. In Egypt, to have a travel agency, it requires lots of money because they don't allow you to have a new company. You must buy a license of an old company. So it took me a while to do this. So I was a leader of so many successful trips. With that concept, I'm telling the people the truth, showing the people all the deep layers of ancient Egypt and modern Egypt, and trying hard to give them good quality, because I understand that the quality of the accommodation and the food is helping them to feel comfortable. So when we go to the field, they will be in a good shape. And I always joke with them and telling them, you are not in a tour. This is a military service. Because we start like 8 or 9 o'clock, maximum 9, the whole day. We don't go back to the hotel before night. So we spend all the time in the site. Most of the sites, they call us to go out because they are closed. That's why so many people. Yes.
They throw you out.
And sometimes the siren of the police car.
Wouldn't they be shocked if you said, "Hey, we're spending the night and camping out"? You'd really get in trouble.
Exactly. But you know what? That nowadays, or the last 10 years, I actually do this, but with what we call it private permission. We spend extra nights at Giza Plateau or the Osiron Shaft or Saqqara after the closing time, which is great visit. It's a little bit costly, but it's worth it because we will be there by ourselves. Only my group for 2 hours, nobody else. We stay the whole time without any interruption, without any negative energies from any other person. So I started to lead tours and to control all the elements and trying to offer the best services. That also gave me a chance to work with other names and speakers, not only because of the service, but also as a guide with this mentality is helping to improve the quality of the stories. Because unfortunately, you may have good mentality, good ideas, but you come to Egypt, you deal with a regular company, they bring you a regular guide, so you lose like 50% of the balance.
Yeah.
But dealing with me now, we will raising the balance more than 100%. Okay. Mm-hmm. And finally, 2 years ago, I managed to become a partner in a travel agency. And last year, I became a solo owner or like a family business now. Me and my family, we own our own company now without partners. So
yes, is that Saba?
Exactly. We call it Saba Tours. Yes. I was looking for some names, but it seemed that all the names were taken or similar names were taken. Like I wanted to call my company Omega Tours or Omega Tours. I found that there is a company with that name, so I wanted to call it Alpha Omega. So many names until I said, why I'm like distracting myself. There is a name, and I always explain it to my clients, and they feel excited about it. Saba. Saba is the word star in ancient Egypt. Okay. Yeah, Saba only means a star, but in many cases we see it Saba with the symbol gate. So Saba can mean just a star and also can mean star gate. Okay. So I called it Saba Tours, your gate to Egypt. Even the slogan.
Gateway.
Well, isn't that interesting? That's interesting because we didn't talk, Mohammed, but I'm known as the Queen of the Stargate. I am the Queen of the Stargate. No, but really, and my crystals, and no, really, I was given that name, and I was given another name, Kianu, with the Mori, and
interesting.
Yeah,
I
so
think
we'll talk about that after.
The next era, it will be more connected with the stars. We will, as humans, we will be more connected with the stars and receiving more and feeling more about the stars. But something important, before I started Sabatours, 2016, I started as a private logo to myself and private title, Guide of Egypt. Because
Yes.
I found that there are a group called Egyptologist and another big group called Chemitologist. And both groups are one extreme right, the other an extreme left. Okay? And they are fighting and they are denying. So I wanted to like tell them, no, we take what is right from here, what is logical, and we take what is right from there, what is logical, and we shall not deny each other. We deny things we see it wrong. So I started to say, okay, I will be your guide. I am going to guide both of you. So I called myself Guide of Egypt, and I chose that the symbol looks like two pyramids, one step pyramid, one true pyramid. But I see it like the energy waves, the energy flow, which will give us the ability to do this. And then it will come as a straight line. Yes, some people can see pyramid. I see it as energy flow with the pyramid shape. Okay, so that will be our path and our chance, or the energy foundation, or the energy support for our journey to find the truth about.
Yes. What I'm hearing is a synchronicity. What I'm hearing is that you've opened a gateway into Egypt to bridge the understanding and balance of understanding between traditional Egyptology and alternative or esotericism and hematology. So together, so you're bringing people together and connecting them and trying to get them to stop nitpicking at each other and find those elements of truth in their gnosis where that comes together.
Exactly.
And that way you introduce people who need that knowledge, who don't have it yet, to a broader perspective and a better understanding. So you're really you're bridging the gap, bringing people together.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Exactly. Because I will give you
we're going to stop
example.
recording right there. Just a sec, guys.
Okay. I will give you a small example about the debate and the conflict between the two groups. When we go to the Great Pyramid and we walk, especially to the east side, and we look to the base, we find that they made a layer of blocks with what we call it interlocking design. The blocks, like the famous wall in Peru, that the biological stones, okay? So the Egyptologists tried to make it so simple explanation, and they say this is a way to resist vibrations from earthquakes and to keep it together instead of. So the other team saying, they laugh at this opinion and say, no, this is not correct. We don't have earthquakes in Egypt, and how come they deny the story completely. No, that is not correct. We must look to the text and only deny the things which doesn't make any sense, like to resist vibrations. In my opinion, yes, we must keep that part. But from what is the source of vibrations? Earthquakes? No, we don't have earthquakes. So, but it must be vibrations. But from what? And by the way, when you go truly to see it, it is completely interlocked. There is one block with 8 sides. So it is connected with 6 stones. So that is unbelievable. This design, in my opinion, is hard as the building the pyramid itself, just that level.
I noticed actually that you do see examples of classical megalithic architecture in and around the pyramid complex, specifically at the Sphinx Temple, where you have the classical marshmallow stones,
right?
Whereas the pyramid itself does not exhibit those same characteristics, which means that it must have been built either before that, or at the same time as the Sphinx itself, or that the Sphinx enclosure is a lot older than the Sphinx itself or the pyramid.
True.
Yeah, and the other thing, Mohammed, you mentioned about earthquakes and that, that they did the structure to protect against earthquakes. It might not have been that, but they have to admit that Egypt, as well as every place else, went through catastrophic events in a cyclical period of time.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it doesn't matter, what the occurrence was, whether it was earthquakes or fire and brimstone or vibrations or who knows what at the time of these big and flooding. There was definitely a cyclical pattern of catastrophic events that they always prepared for. And you can maybe talk about it and the significance and the protection that the pyramidal shape offers as far as that type of event in being protected interior to the pyramidal shape and the energies for any kind of outside.
Here is my point. So if we take the story as serious story, but we want to change it, to fix it, so if we deny it, okay, we lost the case, we lost the chance to find one of the truths. But if we accept the story but try to see what is wrong in the story, we will understand something very important, that if they talk about vibrations, and we must admit that they had also great knowledge, but it is twisted in some sections, okay? So activation from what? I reached an answer. Activation from the big machine itself, the machine. And what is the machine? Is the pyramid. So as if the ancient Egyptians built the machine and all the accessories to help the machine, but were designed in a way also to not be affected with the machine. Okay, so these interlocking stones are exposed daily to vibrations from the machine. So they must do it this way. And I always tell my clients that if they make a stone like 200 kilograms is more than enough. But no, they made it bigger. They made it 1 ton, 2 tons. And as Dialabor said in other section, they make it 20 tons, 30, 40 tons. Like, this is too much. 1 block, 1 ton is more than enough, even smaller. Like I was telling today in my tour to Saqqara, that so many of the ancient churches are built from blocks this size, like only 25 kilograms. Hundreds of mosques in Egypt, 1,000 years old and older, also from the same size of stones, and still in great condition. So why the need of huge megalithic blocks? Because of that story, because of the activation and the vibrations from the site itself. So they wanted to make stable buildings to resist the effect of vibrations.
I would say it's all relative and proportional.
Yes, true.
So what they were building, and I would imagine that the size of the stones and the blocks and the types of stones, even, like you'd make comment on that, Mohammed, because there's certain stones or blocks that would use that would have quartz crystals for energy within them, like the granites and stuff that they would use that for to build with, because of the energy within those type of stones and the for recording that they definitely use. So I think that's kind of important too. So I would imagine that it would be proportional energy-wise from 1 stone to a 2-ton stone, as far as how much energy it would be able to hold or transfer, or so it'd be proportional, I would imagine.
Exactly. And this is what I always say. Like, according to the size, we expect the volume of the energy. Like our modern
I'll give you something. Sorry to interrupt. I'll give you an analogy that just came to mind really quick. Let's just take our modern vehicle, a truck. The engine of a truck for the power and energy of a vehicle. Well, you have different sizes of engines for horsepower, depending what you want your vehicle to do and how much energy or power you want that truck to have or vehicle. So just simple like that, even today. So if they're creating energy by building pyramids, then again, it's proportional. Small blocks, smaller pyramids, smaller energy. Big blocks, big pyramids, more energy.
Yes. And I will teach you something very important. I came up with 4 elements. If we talk about any active site, must have these 4 elements in good shape. If any element is missing, the place is going to be inactive. The first element is the location. So this pyramid was built in that specific point. Any few meters south or north or east, no, it must be at that point. And that, by the way, I wrote this in my book, that the location of the second pyramid, according to contractors and to any engineering company, is the worst location ever. If any company is going to build a pyramid and they're going to tell them that spot where I want you to put the pyramid, they will refuse immediately, because the ground is a sloping angle at that level. So the ancient Egyptians had to level the ground, to cut the part from the west all the way down 8 meters, and then horizontal about 200 meters.
We also know the fact that it was placed in that exact spot because those stones come from a quarry that's over 600 kilometers away in Aswan.
Yes, but not all of it. But my point that if they just moved 20 meters to the west side, it is flat ground.
Mm-hmm.
No, they didn't.
So what Mohammed's saying, I think, is that why did they not build it on the flat ground and 20 meters away and cut half of a side of a mountain to put it in an exact spot? And that's that's because the energy in that point, or that vortex of energy, is in that exact spot. So you have different ley lines or crossing of energetic or magnetic systems on our planet that hold it, and that was a vortex of energy. Then you can feel it, you can measure them, we can calculate them. So they knew exactly where to build.
And they built their temples the same way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
They built
So
their temples over those lines too, right?
Okay, but there are more things to add to the same story. So we talk about location, and after location, we talk about design. Is it pyramid with this certain angle, 51 or 52 or 53, with one room underneath or two rooms inside or three or what? So also the design is very important to give us certain function. Number 3, the material. Is it going to be just limestone or granite or mix or granite room? Okay, so location, design, material, and number 4 is connected with location also, but it is related to the sky, the alignment.
That's right.
So if we go back to the second pyramid, yes, if the second pyramid was built in another site, will not be aligned with the first pyramid, and both aligned with the third, with the Orion belt. Okay, or it won't be matches the same angle like the 3 stars of Orion. So these 4 laws, if I can call it this way, the 4 laws, if you mess with the design, like there is a pillar or an obelisk in this shape, and we move it to London or to Turkey or to Paris, that the design is no longer okay, so that the function will stop.
I'm sorry, what did you call it? The 4 what?
What?
What did you call it? The 4 what?
The 4 laws. From a law
laws,
like
laws.
Yes, the 4 laws.
LAWS, the 4 laws.
Yes.
Yeah, laws.
Okay.
I think it's the Great Pyramid exhibits all 4 of those, because what you're seeing is it looks almost constructed like a battery, because you're using 2 different types of stones. Right. And also you have 2 different above ground chambers. You have the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and each of them has 2 different ventilation shafts. Right. And each of those ventilation shafts would be like the positive and negative pole of a battery almost.
That's right.
Yes.
And does it not also have water underneath as well, which you need the water? They always have the water flowing, an aquifer underneath, because you need that for the charge. No, and then the capstones would have to be important too, because that's why the capstones were gold or a capacitor. And that's how I knew that pyramids were.
I want to make a clear statement about water under the pyramid, okay? Because I have been to the subterranean chamber hundreds of times. If we talk about the pyramid itself or the room under the pyramid, there is no water at all. Okay, the pyramid is dry like a dry wooden branch.
Oh no, I didn't mean the water was in the pyramid. There has to be an aquifer underneath, or a charge of water in the ground underneath, or something.
It's a water table far away under the pyramid, which I see it connected, because we can see a shaft in front of the second pyramid called the Osirian shaft, about 60 meters, and there is water actually at the end of that shaft. So we can see it, we can touch it, okay? So there is water table for sure under Giza Plateau, but it is not direct inside the subterranean room.
No, no, didn't think so. Yes. Not exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so, because some people, they believe that the water in the Osirian shaft is the same water under the pyramid.
Okay? You know, what's interesting here is that, you know, year after year, study after study, show after show of talking about these things individually, these 4 laws individually. Mm-hmm. You're putting, this is the first time I've heard them brought all together, 1, 2, 3, 4, as a collective reason for why they're constructed the way they are. So I find that fascinating, because I've heard all the different theories on their location and how the materials that but putting it all together, it's starting to make a whole lot more sense. And they follow these same laws with the construction of their temples too.
Everything, yes.
Everything they do.
Even
and so this is a good segue into the topic of our actual another reason for being with you here tonight is what in the world was going on with Nefertiti and Akhenaten, why they established this worship of the sun, why they changed their location and left Luxor and created a new city. What were they really up to? Because the theory up to this point from mainstream archaeologists and Egyptologists is that he was trying to create a religious movement, move everybody to the worship of one true God, get rid of all the other gods and goddesses, and that he had a political religious agenda. You and I were talking the other day, you know, about this, and there's a lot more going on there, and it has to do with those 4 laws. It has to do with energy, and it has to do with cycles of time, right, which is something we've been studying, you know, as a community. So why don't you tell us what your perspective is on what they were really up to, what their name, even the meanings of their names have value that we might not realize.
Okay, I want to explain something quickly and will help us to understand what we are talking about. If you look to my picture behind you, you will find that this king in black, this is King Thutmose III. Okay, and above the forehead, I put the symbol star and the symbol gate. So that is star gate above the head, because he is one of the few kings who had the star gate next to his name. Okay, so we can understand that the word Stargate can mean an actual Stargate, okay, or can be also a title for certain knowledgeable person with this type of knowledge. Because if it is a royal title, all the Egyptian kings would have that title, but no, only few of them. Okay, so my guessing that that title was given to people with great, deep knowledge, not easy for all the other Egyptians or even the high class or the royalties to know this knowledge or to learn, okay, or to become what we mistakenly call it priest. He was a scientist. He was not a priest. Okay. So now we understand that there was types of people, or a type of people can host great secret knowledge. Here is the surprise, my guessing that Akhenaten was one of them. Akhenaten was one of these wisdom keepers, one of these people who had the chance to see or to read or to understand the knowledge of the ancestors. And when we say ancestors, we are talking about thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands BC. Okay. Akhenaten, his name is Akhenaten. Akhenaten. Yes, exactly. So Aton, that is not something new brought by Akhenaten. No, Aton was an old symbol older than the Egyptian civilization itself. Aton is one of the cycles of the sun, one of the powers of the sun. And that's why when they explain that word Neter, they call it God or goddess. No, Neter is force of nature. It is not God. Because if we say Ra is the sun god, someone else will say no. Atum is the sun god. And another will say no. Amun is the sun god. Amun Ra is the sun god. Khibr is the sun god. Muntu is the sun god. Aton is the sun. Which one is the sun god? Now we have 6 gods for the sun. Which one? No, none of them are sun gods. They are all phases for the sun, different powers of the sun. Okay?
Different energies.
And different energies. So if I can say it quickly, we have Khibr, early morning sun. We have Ra, morning sun. We have Atom, noon. We have Atun, afternoon. And we have Amun, sunset. Okay, those are the 5 main phases for the sun. So Atun existed before Amun. Okay, and I believe that each cycle is the same, what we call it, grand year, 26,000 years. So that is why, so I can say that the Amun cycle during the time of Akhenaten, so he was already, or I think it was about 26, so it will be 22,000 years passed from the cycle of Amun. Okay, so my story about Akhenaten, that he was trying to recall the system of Aton, the system of the cycle of Aton, or the conditions of the cycle of Aton. What are these conditions? Number 1, light. Amun is dark, so Amun cycle is dark. And dark is so many chances for manipulations, deceiving, hiding. Okay, didn't want this. So when he revolted, he didn't revolt against religion. No, he revolted against conditions. He revolted against the sacred keepers who don't want to share with the. So the Mayan calendar, it didn't say the end of humanity, it was the end of the cycle, 2012. Okay, so in Aton, they explain it wrongly, the loyal to Aton. Okay, loyal, good person, because this is a religious message. No, is light. Means light. That's why we have the word Akhet, the horizon, and the horizon comes from the sun, so it is light. Okay, so and by the way, is not any kind of light, it is the astral light, because they understand that the Ba is the soul on the ground, it's called Ba, but when it leaves the body, goes very high at the sky, after the 7th sky, it changes to a white bird, what we call it, the royal or the crescent ibis bird, okay, called So is astral light, or what we can call it, the source of light. So Akhenaten, the light of Aton, not loyal, not friendly, not good with the light of Aton. Okay, and that was.
Mohamed, I have a question. I think I'm understanding it correct, what you're saying, I think, or what we're trying to get at. So what you're saying is, of course, the periods are the 26,000 years, the precession of the equinox and how that works in their cycles. And when Nefertiti and Akhenaten came, they were trying to end a cycle early. And is that what they were doing? And
no,
to me, it sounds like
end the cycle. No, they wanted to rewind the cycle.
Rewind it. Okay, switch.
Yes.
Okay, rewind
Yes.
it. So they were trying to go back, and they were trying to recapture an energy that restarted that
Yes.
no longer existed in a period of time. Oh,
Exactly.
So sort of like we want to do nowadays. Same thing. Let's go back in time to the last golden age would be good, but before we came to this.
Yes.
So basically, that's what he was trying to do. Was trying to change the energy of the time and completely switch and rewind it to another period.
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay, because he felt that it is not right to live in that cycle, because the priest of Amun Ra, misused the powers of the cycle. The original cycle of Amun is peace, is calm, is relaxing. Okay, it is a chance for Earth to recover, because between or after Aton cycle, and my guessing that was something like 20,000 BC, there was great disaster. So after the 4 cycles of light, when you move to darkness, it is not easy. It will be darkness. And the opposite, when you move from dark to light, it will be easy, pandemic like Corona and that stuff. Okay, it's not big disaster. So as if Earth wanted a time to recover. But the priest, instead of using this in a good way, he made it, he wanted to take the chance to deceive, to hide, to work for himself. That's why Akhenaten, and before Akhenaten, by the way, his father Amenhotep III is the one who started this. Amenhotep III started to put the label Aton in many places. He called the wife of his the boat of his wife, Queen T, the boat, I forgot the word. It is like something like Aton boat. Okay, so he put the title Aton to the boat, and that will be like a metaphor that the boat is going to cut through the water as if light is cutting through darkness. Okay,
the barge of light, the light
yes,
ship.
exactly. Okay, so that family, by the way, we shall understand the background of this family. This family is very knowledgeable family, especially the family of Queen T. The grandmother and grandfather of Akhenaten are Yoya and Toya. Yoya and Toya, in modern terminology, they are Nobel Prize award. Okay, they are very smart, very knowledgeable. Yoya with the priest of Ashmun or Ashmonain, that place in Armenia, which hosted the famous story of creation. We call it the Ogdad story, and the priest of Ashmun is one of the major powers. Him and the priest of Heliopolis, On, are the 2 major powers of ancient Egypt, and the king or anyone must show great respect for the priest of On and the priest of Ashmonain. So that was the grandfather of Akhenaten. So, but I'm still not talking about religion. I'm talking about science. I'm talking about real experts with geology, with astronomy, with the secrets of the elders and the ancestors. Okay, so they, in my opinion, passed all the information, or not necessarily they deliberately did it. He learned it because he was the crown prince, so he learned that, and he was a great philosopher, so he wanted to change that during his time. And it happened that he met.
Weren't they the keepers then? Those daughters, they were the keepers of the ancient wisdoms and knowledge. It wasn't just anybody that had that information.
Yes. Education in general in ancient Egypt was through the temple. Like nowadays, when you go to the Catholic schools or the Azhar Mosque or Azhar University in Egypt, that is the famous mosque. So that type of education is a copy from the ancient teaching, that you want to study physics, mathematics, yes, go to the temple first. You go to the temple.
But it's the divine.
Yes.
It's the divine wisdom teachings, and he was the son
yes.
and grandson of, so he's directly related to that ancient bloodline.
Exactly. You know what, I will tell you something else very interesting, that there is in Komombo temple, tour guides always explain something called calendar.
Komombo.
Yes, day 1, day 2, day 3. But they don't explain what is written next to day 1, what is written to day 2 next. Okay, it seemed that it was the duties of each day for certain priest. One of the duties for a certain priest is counting the stars every 3 or 4 hours. So from a simple explanation, it looks like silly, very silly mission. Like, why he cannot count all the stars? But because we don't understand exactly what is going on, so we don't pay attention to this. But if we pay attention to other cases, like the Egyptian recognized that Sirius star is always there all the time, but it disappears, I think in May, for 70 days. And it comes back after 70 days, okay? After 7 days from the second appearance, it will be the flood in Egypt. It will be almost July 17th, okay? So that means what? That there was someone who was every day watching the sky and telling them, guys, now Sirius disappeared, and they start counting. So he was an astronomer. He was, so the Egyptian, or part of the temple, was an observatory. Counting the stars also. Let me ask you this question. Why we have the year 365 days? Why not 340, 350, or 200? Because the ancient Egyptians realized that there are 36 groups at the sky, groups of stars. Each group is lasting for 10 days. So they counted that this group appears in day 1 and disappears in day 10. Then another group, 36 groups. So they said, okay, the Egyptian year is 360 days. And then something told them that, no, this is not accurate. There are more days. So they created 5 magical days. So the story is saying that, but we read the story in a child style, but it hides very deep knowledge behind that. So they created 5 magical days, so it became 365 days. Okay. Based on what? Based on that person watching the sky every night. Not from that temple only, no, from so many temples. They're watching the sky, paying attention to every movement of the stars, constellations. The same temple, Komombo, we see what we call them gods, mistakenly gods, the word Neter again, and crowning the king. You know, that is a date, not a scene. Because when we understand which Neter is this, we know that this is Venus. This is the planet Venus. The other one is Sirius, yes, Jupiter, and Mars. So as if they are telling us that this king became a king on that day when that star and the 3 planets were in one line, aligned together. Okay.
So he's following. So what he did is he found the location where he felt all those energies and the vortex, if you will, and the exact alignment that he needed with planetary alignment to dial back the gate. So that's why he created that new city at that location.
Yes, look, as if he felt that maybe the knowledge he knew could do better conditions. I think that was his belief, that he felt that he shall not hide or keep the knowledge. Maybe he can use it to change the situation, but he found that there is great resistance from Amun-Ra priest. Okay, so he had to leave Luxor, which is, we can call it the house of Amun-Ra. Karnak temple and Luxor temple are dedicated 100% to Amun-Ra, and there is a phenomenon. It shows the power of the sun every December, 21st of December. Okay, the sun rises exactly from the middle point of the temple. The last shrine of the temple, it rises exactly from the middle, 21st of December.
I think, yeah, I think Akhenaten had, since he had a genetic basis for both religious power and political power, I think he was trying to just consolidate it all under political power, because it seems to me at that time that the religions or mini religions dedicated to each of these individual gods or neteru or forces of nature were kind of a distraction. And that's maybe one of the reasons why he decided to relocate, to put all those other religions aside and to consolidate his power under his own religion. At least that's the impression I get, which is also why he was so unpopular in later years.
Look, I would agree with you easily under one condition. If we talk about, or if he did what he did to Amun, if he did the same to all the other knitters, but he was targeting Amun only.
Oh.
So he kept Horus, he kept Ma'at, he kept Ra. So the second name for Aton, and also for himself, is Ra, Wa and Ra. One unit was Ra, okay? Nefer, Neferu Ra. So he kept so many knitters. He kept Habi, he kept Jehuti, okay? So what happened? He didn't want Amun. And as I said, Amun is the hidden sun. So Ra is the sun. So Ra and Amun are the same. But Ra is visible, Amun is not visible. Okay? So he kept Ra. He didn't want Amun. So because he didn't have a problem with the religion. No, he had a problem with the cycle, Amun cycle.
I see. Yes.
The whole
Yeah,
cycle,
revolted,
because he
yes,
had the knowledge of the cycle, so it was something he did not want to continue, right? And he didn't want to go into, stay within that cycle. So he used all his knowledge and skills based on Muhammad's 4 laws. Take those 4 laws, we can go back on them. And so he used all those 4 laws to try to recapture or change the energy and actually shift the whole cycle of time and awareness and energy of that whole area. So he wanted to actually, like you say, rewind to a previous period, like we want to. We want to all think we want to go to the golden age. It's the same thing, that 1,000-year golden age that we think we're moving towards, into the age of Aquarius. It's the same thing. We you know, if we could, and say we're moving into a dark age, well, wouldn't we do everything we could if we had the power and had the knowledge to completely avoid a cycle of time if we could, if it was one we really didn't want to do, and just skip it? Let's just skip that one and go right to the golden age again.
Yeah, well, from what I understand is his perspective was higher the whole time, was shifting to a higher consciousness, even his wife's name, the true meaning of Nefertiti.
Yes. I must explain that the word Nefer, which is like also all the mainstream and the language books explain Nefer as beautiful. Okay. But when you look to what is the combination of Nefer? The air pipe and the 2 lungs. Okay. So what do you get from this combination? Harmony. Harmony and perfect system. Lungs with the air pipe, so they work perfectly. Okay, so it creates harmony, and harmony creates beauty. Sometimes there is something with our understanding, it is not beautiful, but because it is harmonic, so we see it beautiful. And sometimes something beautiful, but it is not harmonic, so it is not beautiful. So the famous title for Nefertiti as the beautiful one, I don't see it correct. It is the one in harmony. Okay. So her name is, most of the people also say her name Nefertiti. Okay. No, that is not correct, because Nefer is male title. I am Nefer. But when I say Karen, Nefret, any female in ancient Egypt must have T at the end of her name and any adjective. Okay, only some exceptions, like Hathor is the only female, doesn't have T at the end, and Set, the one they claim he's the evil one, has T in the end of his name. Those are the only 2 exceptions. Okay, but Iset, Nebhat, Waset, Sekmet, Tifnut, you find that all have T at the end, and all the male letters have no T. So all the adjectives, so Nefret Et. And
But what
Et
about
is,
Isis?
but Isis, this is the Greek. It is Set originally.
Oh, it's a set. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And also Nephthys, not Nephthys, Nephet.
Nefret.
So those are the Greek ways to read it. Okay.
Okay.
And by the
Well,
Okay, so after we understand that the name Nefer means harmony, and we understand that we shall say her name Nefret, Et. So Nefret means the harmony in a female way, in a female level. Okay, Et, and that is similar word in Arabic language. Atiya means to come. Okay, or like coming towards or going through. So the full name in this case means the female harmony is coming, or the female harmony is here, or is going through. So as if Akhenaten, with his great heritage from his mother and his his grandfather from the mother side, and we can apply maybe the same story on Nefertiti, that her father, we are not very sure about this, but it is like 70–80% that her father is the priest of Aton, the enlightened
Wow.
who later became one of the kings of Egypt after Tutankhamun. So imagine that if I also was one of these secret holders, and he was telling his beloved daughter the secrets, and those two great minds, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, met, and they started to cooperate together. They believed with the same story. They wanted to change the cycle. So I believe that what happened, that those two great minds, great adventurers, so I can love to call them adventurers, because they challenged the whole cycle with all the, if I can call it, eternal conditions. They challenged
Wow.
the cycle. That's why they wanted to change the capital, not to hide, not to run away, no, to create new foundation, like virgin land. And by the way, that part of Egypt is close to Ashmonaim. This is the location of his grandfather, famous city or ancient city, Ashmonaim, the city of Tos. Okay, you know Tos, the ibis bird, the Hermes, the Enoch. Those are all titles for Tos, the Egyptian nature for wisdom. Okay, so this is Amarna on the east side. On the same line to the east side, it will be Ashmonaim on the same axe. Okay, so he didn't escape, as many people say, for completely new ground without any history. No, that part has deep history, but that deep history is related to the very ancient history of pre-cataclysmic Egypt, which existed before 10,000 BC.
Getting this, Karen, this is pretty cool.
Yes, because I do the catastrophic events. I specialize in that as far as geology, and it's right within the time frame of each event of that around 11,000 years. So you're talking right within the exact time frame for each.
It all fits.
They all fit. Yeah, within that exact 11,000 years.
Mohamed, is there any truth at all that, or from what you've seen or what you've heard or experienced, that they were actually related bloodline wise, not only as cousins, but possibly even half brother, half sister? That Nefertiti and Akhenaten
somehow possible, because if you look to the children, they have strange. Look, the family of Akhenaten is very strange in many levels. Daughters of Akhenaten has very elongated skulls. Okay, he had 6 daughters, by the way. The 6 of them had the same type of the elongated skulls. Some of the skulls are not just elongated, but also wide, like his big elder daughter, her, like, you know, the crown shape. So as if she is wearing that elongated cone crown. If we agree that Tutankhamun is the son of Akhenaten, also Tutankhamun, it seemed that he suffered from the same family issue, that it seemed that his father and his mother are related, so he had some genetic problems, and that's why his I don't remember which leg was different, the left or the right, but one was taller than the other, and he died young. So we assume that he had some genetic problems, big problems.
Deformities.
Deformities, exactly. Okay, so yes, in a very high level, that maybe the family of Nefertiti and the family of T, her mother-in-law, are related. Okay, so she and her husband are maybe cousins, not direct cousins, but could be from the same big family.
Oh, excellent. Okay, Mohamed, since we're talking about why, I kind of wanted to ask, do you think it failed, right? I guess it didn't, you know, they didn't have success with starting the new city or convincing, you know, people enough to the energy to make the changes and the stuff. What do you believe was the main downfall to their operation here, like they were trying
yes,
to?
you are right. They failed 100%. Okay. And my belief that the main problem that they were the only believers. Akhenaten and Nefertiti were the only believers, and all the people who pretended to be with them after the death of Akhenaten, and by the way, it's many people say he was killed. No, I disagree. He died naturally, my belief. After he died, they felt that the link between them and this so-called cycle and so-called energetic atom cycle disappeared. So all of them run back to Ammon cycle. All of them run back to the conditions, and they try to show. By the way, I'm not denying that religious cover for the story, but that is not the main point. Okay, so
No,
they, in a second or less than a second, all of them returned to the if I can call it the base or the shelter of Ammon, including the high priest of Aton. Okay, so that one could like resist at least for a month or a week. No, in my opinion, the second day he was at Ammon temple showing respect and regret about doing this adventure with Akhenaten. Okay.
And when you say they were the only ones who believed, they did have a city. They did have hundreds of followers that followed him there and believed that what he was doing was a good thing. But you're talking in terms of the priest caste or the higher echelon groups, the ones that were in control, the ones in power. They failed to change their minds. They failed to get them to share in their knowledge or share in their gnosis. So, and they're the ones that control the masses, if you will. But he did have a number of followers, right, in the city. What happened when they didn't succeed? Were those cities leveled to the ground on purpose, or were they buried to preserve them, or what is your take on what happened to him?
Look, again, what happened that the only two believers were Akhenaten and Nefertiti, because they understood the situation better than all the other people. They understood the secrets.
They had the higher consciousness. Okay.
Exactly. The other people didn't believe on what Akhenaten used to believe. No, they believed in Akhenaten and Nefertiti. So they're
you know what?
belief,
I would say, Mohamed, it's not belief. I would say that it was understanding they lacked. Because,
yes,
you know, if they didn't have the education, learning, or the consciousness and energy to understand what was going on, it's not that they didn't believe. They believed, like you say, in Nefertiti and Akhenaten and who they were, but didn't understand what was going on. So as soon as they weren't around or something left without the understanding to continue or the knowledge, there was nothing left for them just to go back to their old ways and the people that they did understand. And
That makes sense.
so it had to do with understanding.
Very good. Like I can use a simple example. Imagine if there is a battle or a war, and the general is the only one who knows the plan. But his soldiers believe in him. So go right, okay, go left, okay. And then this general suddenly disappeared. They don't know the plan.
And nobody has the plan, so you have automatic failure. So this is what happened there. Without anybody having the knowledge, right, experience, or the plan, right, the blueprint, it automatically collapsed and fell, like you say, within a couple days. So, so they did a disservice by not educating other people or having enough people with the same kind of knowledge, I guess, was maybe their downfall.
So also my guessing what happened
for today.
Yes, what happened to the city? Yeah, the city, in my opinion, was not teared down deliberately. No, it was neglected. People left the city because they found that it is not proper to live in a city against the rules of the cycle. So they left it, and by time the city started to disappear one by one. And by the way, when you go to Amarna now, you hardly see anything. It's like almost zero, almost like maybe less than 1%.
What was the rumor then about them striking his image from all hieroglyphs, striking his image from statues, hers too, Nefertiti as well, as if they never existed? I mean, is that just a story, or do you think there's any truth in that?
I doubt that ordinary people would have done that, because ordinary people didn't know how to read and write hieroglyphics. Only the ruling class or the intellectuals would have known what the symbol or hieroglyph for Akhenaten was to deface it.
Let me tell you this. Do you know a queen called Hatshepsut?
Yes.
Yes.
Her name also was chiseled out, and so many. So Hatshepsut has no connection with Akhenaten. So what happened?
Yeah.
This is divide and conquer game. It is a message from the priest, and they sometimes they use some certain story to serve other function. So he was the one who did that against Akhenaten. In my opinion, he didn't care about Akhenaten and the story of Akhenaten, but it's kind of a warning to other rulers not to do the same like this person.
Ah.
They want something interesting, that it seemed that some people wanted to use Akhenaten's story as a weapon against a Mun-Ra priest, saying, if you don't listen to us, if you don't be nice to us, we're gonna revolt against you the same like Akhenaten did. And guess what? That the name Amun was chiseled out in some temples like Karnak temple and Luxor temple. I found this, and I made a YouTube video called The Return of the Gods, explaining that Amun was almost disappeared and then came back because the locals were about to lose faith because of some hard times, and the priest was mean not to share knowledge and wisdom and wealth also, because some cases that the temple was the main source of food and money in ancient Egypt, like in the collapse times. Okay.
I guess the takeaway lesson here is that you can't really fight City Hall, and you can't really go against scientific and political and religious orthodoxy, at least not too radically. That would be the lesson of Akhenaten and his failure.
Well, I get a different. I agree with that, but I get a little different. Also, higher up there too, Dalibor, in thought is the real lesson here is you can't screw with the universal timeline and the natural evolution of cycle. You can lift higher. You can raise consciousness and help people prepare, and help people to make better choices or whatever, or you yourself can make better choices for how you spend your time. But when you try to screw with the natural law of changing energy cycles, and trying to make a shift happen or go back and reset the clock, you
Good
know, I
point.
think it's a
Not
fallacy to
something
say,
not something you can force, I don't think, even though they try.
I can
Uh-huh.
tell you something interesting, that the our ancestors, and I'm talking about thousands of years ago. I'm not talking about the regular ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians at 10,500 BC and at 9,700 BC, they learned that lesson, and maybe them or the generation before them understood that the strike comes no matter. The nature will take revenge from those humans who mess with nature. So they built underground cities. They made Cappadocia in Turkey. They made thousands of tunnels in Egypt and all over the world, because they knew it. You cannot mess with nature. So they understood that one day the sun will send its anger on them. So they must hide. So that is what happened. It happened in 10,500 BC, and then the end of the ice age, 9,700 BC. So these tunnels and underground cities were built because they knew what you just said, that you cannot mess with nature.
Right. And the sun, apparently by the science today, I'm still researching, it does what's called a micronova burst, and it does it and throws its fire and brimstone at us. That's why in geology we get the glass beads, because that happened during those periods, and they're always at the 11,068 year range. It's just like clockwork. It's something that we cannot change. And it's something that happens on a regular pattern, like they knew then. So exactly time frame. Exact. I just did a show last week about the Ice Age, because I was up there for the last couple seasons and have collected a whole of the Ice Age mammal fossils and everything. And that event exactly happened at 11,000 range ago as well. It's always the same time frame.
well, we've been going for quite a bit here in Dalibor. Did you have anything last minute here that you wanted to talk about on this subject before we end our conversation? Because we've gone over time.
Well, yeah, all I can say is that my knowledge of the ancient Egyptian history and stuff like that is nowhere nearly as good as that of Mohammed. I would say that it has something to teach all of us, no matter what period of time we specialize in, but the story is pretty much the same. You know, humanity has great potential, but we always somehow screw up. We never follow our highest ideals. We always go with what's more convenient, what's easier, instead of aspiring to be better or aspiring to real, true greatness. And I think we see that with the example of Akhenaten and Nefertiti.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, Mohamed, thank you so much. We hope to have you back on, because as we touched on a lot tonight, and you and I talked about hooking up with Mandy Moo about some of the Australian connections in with Egypt, and we also talked a little bit about the stargates and what they really are and what they really mean, and if we can get you to come back on and explore and exchange some knowledge with you on those topics, it would be greatly appreciated. So we're looking forward to that. So we do have to hook up with you next week, and so when we sign off here, hang on, stick around, and we'll just spend a couple minutes talking about our next step with you. But for the rest of the viewing audience, thank you very much, and we hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. And we'll see if we have some time, if we can air this with a live chat room, where we can air it with some extra panelists. We'll just see what works out in the timing with everything. But we really enjoyed this today, and you are the person I've been waiting to hook up with as far as being in Egypt, as far as with the kind of things that you talk about, and the way that you're open to making those connections between the traditional academic and the esoteric alternative perspectives. So I haven't really met anyone like you who feels free enough to talk about it to the extent that you have, and that's really wonderful to finally hook up with someone like you. And
yeah, thank you. And I love it, Mohamed, because I like bringing in the science. I want the science. And I want the geology. I want the geologic records. I want the science, so that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What you do is quite unique. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you a little later. Hang in there.